Okay, folks, welcome back to another episode of Not Funny Guys presents Red Dwarf Rewatch. And we are chugging right along here. We have reached episode 3 of Series 10, Lemons, as usual, directed and written by Doug Naylor. So, before we get into this, let's talk about a couple things. First of all, release date, 18th October 2012. We have some guest stars. We have Indira Joshi as Aaron, a few other people, and Nicholas Richards as Uncle Aaron, Tom Pepper and as Man Who Might Be Jesus and Judas. That'll be fun. And let's see here, James Baxter as Jesus. But we'll find out more about that. So let's break this down. So as usual, we start on Red Dwarf. We're over the surface of a moon. I think we're just doing... The moon has no relevance. It's just there as a nice little set piece. I also really digging that... I hadn't mentioned this earlier, but I'm really digging that Red Dwarf is now a obviously very large-scale model, I think. Or just amazing CGI, but it looks like a large-scale model. I love that. Old school. We find Lister making something frozen he found on B deck that he next to Crichton's quarters. Not sure what it is. Beef or pork? This will become relevant. This is one of those little details I really appreciate. But Kat rushes in, talking about makeshift golf they're doing down in the autopsy lab, looks at the food, and he takes it and eats it, and then says it needs a little bit more, soy sauce. Lister, we find now, in the cockpit, reading, as part of his robotics course, Most Influential Humans. When Rimmer finds him there, he starts warning him about the dangers of him reading and getting ideas. It's like giving keys to I think he says, what was it? It was Aston Martin. And I don't know, you ever seen those videos where the people drive and it's obviously they've never driven a car of such high horsepower and they usually spin out and crash? I think that's how he's trying to imagine this here. The Lister goes on about these people who made a lot of accomplishments. Mozart, Shakespeare, what they accomplished. He quotes like a dish fit for a king. And things that Shakespeare, lines that are remembered from him. Remember, it's just complaining. He's like, claims Shakespeare is over. Not a fan. Apparently, especially, it has a lot to do with his hair. Apparently, he has what he calls a skullet, a bald mullet. If you ever think of famous photos of Shakespeare, you kind of can see what he's saying here. So Crichton comes in with some incredible news. And he's going to tell them when they basically disabuse him. Like, this isn't like a cleaning thing. He's like, no, I've evolved to pass them. They start pointing out things and he freaks out. But apparently, he found some crates that were in transit, opened one of them up, and it's a rejuvenation shower. And apparently, it allows you to get in and have your DNA kind of rewritten in order to make you or return you to your physical prime with your body cell. Basically, it's time traveling your body cells. Kat says, can I go back to last Thursday? Apparently, that's when his prime was. But I love that Rimmer notes the fact that it's Swedish, it's flat pack, and they will have to do the assembly like an IKEA piece. Although he needs an Allen screwdriver, a Phillips screwdriver and an Allen key in about, I think, an hour or 3 hours. Turns out that Rimmer makes the point that this could take weeks. There's a montage of them assembling. It's very chaotic. They're playing around with the parts. They get it very wrong. And what they build is nothing. And there's so many spare parts, a spare battery, total mess. They go to test it with something organic, which Rimmer initially says maybe Lister should get in there. But then Crichton says, well, we'll just throw in one of Lister's socks. As they turn it on, the beam, it hits them. There's no walls to this thing. And it sends them time traveling. Looks like they're back on Earth. Of course, Kat's like, why do you guys always assume where there's trees, it's Earth? Turns out Crichton finds that it is 23 AD in Albion, what we now know today, or eventually will know as Britain, England, and then Great Britain, during a time before the Roman Empire, actually. This is when we had Druids and stuff. It's 23 AD. I don't believe Claudius won't invade. Well, Caesar has already invaded but didn't stay. Claudius won't invade until the 60s. Can't remember the date, but we're like 40 years off from the Britons, from the Romans actually really showing up here. They realize they're in pre-Rome. They can go back, but they have a remote issue. They have the remote, but one of the extra things I just said a second ago they left off was they don't have the battery. 8 volts. And so Rimmer was like, okay, well, he did an experiment when he was a kid with the potatoes. We can generate electricity. We just need 8 potatoes to make 8 volts. And apparently that's a problem because the potato won't be in Britain till the 16th century. Lemon won't be there till the 14th century. And basically the only place they can consider walking to where they could find lemons is India, which apparently is like 4,000 miles away. Apparently if they start walking now, they can be there in 6 months or so. They do. They end up showing like natives just out of the blue. They meet Aaron, who apparently speaks whatever language they're speaking, even though it should be English. She's been to Albion. She speaks of the druids and the sacrifices, and they're looking for lemons. And she's like, are they famous? He's like, no, but they need it for the potatoes. So they need 8. She thinks that's weird. It's like, go give us 10. And now they need copper. Britain is famous for copper. And Crichton immediately launches into, this is why we need a shopping list. They do get the copper from the coins they have. And then they need some galvanated nails, which apparently they use the nail filer to get them, and at the same time, Rimmer apparently uses the opportunity to shave the beard he's growing. So Crichton gives them some sort of small history lesson, basically ending with Lister saying, Jesus. And a guy behind them turns around briefly and says, yes? Answering to the name. And they're like, wait, why is Jesus in India? They have to placate the cat's stupidity about how old he is, because it's 23 AD, even though it's not a completely accurate count. Rimmer mockingly comes up with the idea that you're dumb, but yeah, he's 23. But this is all about the idea that between his younger years and his being 30 when he sort of reemerges, nobody knows where he went. They're missing years. So this is where they think he might have gone. Rimmer immediately wants to get his autograph. And apparently then they had the whole conversation once again about Arnold Judas Rimmer, his middle name, given to his mother. He thinks it will be an icebreaker. Apparently his middle name is because his mom was a member of the Church of Judas, which believed that Judas and Jesus were, I think, supposedly twins, and they swapped places. And so Judas died on the cross, and then Jesus was able to show up in the tomb and like, hello. And apparently in the end of that version of the story, he went off to southern France with Mary Magdalene and had a lot of kids and invented the wheelbarrow. Noble exercise there. Rimmer then goes to speak to Jesus, but before he can, Jesus has overheard them talking, invites them to eat with him and share their food. Everyone is kind of embarrassed by Rimmer, who's like fawning over him. He mistakes Crichton for a gladiator, because he's bulky. He's a man of peace, and they invite them to sit, and they do the whole Last Supper setup. They put the tables together, they all sit at one time. Jesus claims he has visited Albion before. He's apparently on the run from the Romans, and his uncle comes to warn them, and they have to run. And Jesus wants to show them love. They're like, well, no, it's running instead. And Jesus keeps mentioning some pain he has. But they start working while they're trapped in a closet, avoiding the Romans, while they're banging on the door, trying to explain to Jesus the whole process of creating the battery, which he has no idea. In fact, he doesn't even know what a lemon is. They get the battery. They're all back to the Red Dwarf with Jesus. Crichton works on it, figuring out how to return him and getting the rejuvenator shower working properly to send him back, while the rest of the crew basically hang out with Jesus. He's really impressed by bags, which they had mentioned earlier about the land not having bags, and this is why people drop stuff. The pain returns. He calls it a demon. Pain is back, and he walks off. Crichton deduces that he's probably the kidney stone, and since it's been going on for about 14 days, it's probably too big to pass, and they need to do surgery, but they don't trust the meta-surgeon, the meta-based surgeon, so they have to do it manually because they can't trust the computer. Crichton confesses when pressed that he's been doing it to Lister for years. He took out his spleen a little while back, and he put it in the freezer on D-Deck with the rest of the organs. And this is when Cat and him have the complete realization that that's what Cat ate. No wonder he couldn't figure out if it was beef or chicken. He goes to vomit. They have to go through his urethra to perform the surgery. Lister's not happy about them going anywhere near something like that part on a man. And they're out of antiseptic. Remember, fathers and sons, they're out of antiseptic. Cat's hoarding it somewhere. They cut to the crew in front of Jesus lying on a table, ready to have surgery. They've got to stick the camera in, and Rimmer sees it as a privilege that he, with tongs, will hold JC's penis while they perform this. They get the stone out. They set him up to rest. Jesus is resting. Crichton comes back to feed Jesus when he finds that he's missing. He left a note, and apparently he read the book about himself. He took the remote and has returned to India. He's stomping on it. He goes about trying to then trash his reputation to somehow stop Christianity from happening. He gets into a whole argument. We find Aaron again. He finds this whole argument with about her. He's trying to look for his uncle. He's literally trying to wreck himself by breaking all the 10 Commandments. He's going to go drink. Meanwhile, Crichton does have a spare remote, so they go after him. Crew shows up. JC's arguing about the contradictions of the 10 Commandments, trying to diss on God and the contradictions, really crusading against himself when he then finds the crew coming to find him. Lister and him get into a slap fight, trying to convince JC to be who he is supposed to be again. But it turns out this isn't Jesus Christ of Nazareth, or Jesus of Nazareth. This is Jesus of Caesarea, not the JC they think he is. Very popular name. He's a sheep stealer. And so they basically tell him, look, go live your life, use the lesson, do whatever you learn in the future. He goes to sell bags. Meanwhile, while they're sitting around the pastel, what looks like real JC shows up with his twin, Judas, confirming the twin theory that Rimmer was going on about. And he's about to get up when they tell him to sit down. And we cut. Now, one of my favorite things about this episode, this has that the element they always have when they do time travel and mess. There's a very sublime element here, and I really love the layering in this episode of the way they loop back to things. This is just good writing. I think Doug Naylor, some of the things I've always liked about Doug Naylor is that I think in particular some of these episodes, he's not always a hit, but he really hits it sometimes in a really smart way for comedy. It always makes me think that one of the things that I swear he's doing a good job of. Speaking of Shakespeare, Comedy of Errors, one of my favorite Shakespeare comedies. This has the touchings of some of that in that it's got great ironic timing. It's like Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest. It's the double entendres or the weird theories that turn out to be true, or the sublime misdirection, or the mistaken identities, or in time travel, they got the wrong Jesus, whatever it might be. But that's my thoughts on it, final thoughts there. But next time, we'll be looking at Entangled. So, in the meantime, please like, subscribe, share. Check down below for all our social medias to follow us, look into, keep track. Best way, obviously, of course, to do that is not only to comment, but to subscribe and like. Those are important. But you can also write us directly. We love to hear from our audience. We like to hear from you guys, ideas. It's nice to have ideas that come to us that aren't political, because we're not actually doing that podcast anymore. Not funny politics, but people are still listening to it. I assume it's for better times. We only do it during election years, primarily presidential election years. So that was, yeah. We may have a special. We're working on some ideas. But if you want to write us directly, notfunnyguys.offthereels@gmail.com. Best way to reach out to us. Express some opinions, share things about any of our material. You can talk about what's here on the YouTube channel. You can comment. You can also comment on any of our other Not Funny Guys products. Of course, we have 3. We've got our main podcast, Not Funny Guys Presents Off the Reels, where Casey, Eric, and I talk about movies. We're currently working our way through the Scream franchise, so come check that out. We also have Casey and Eric do one where they talk about wrestling and horror movies. Not Funny Guys Presents Wrestling with the Horror of It All. You can go check that out as well. Or we have one more. You can come listen to me, Dr. John, and our Not Funny gal, Dr. Kristen, talking about whatever we're thinking about in Not Funny Guys Presents Thinking About Thinking, where we get into all kinds of stuff. I know we'll have our newest batch of episodes coming out. We got one up. The second episode of season 2 is up now, but I know our 3rd and 4th, we're going to be getting into some technology and history discussions. So it bounces all over the place. I'm desperately trying to stay more positive, just considering what the world is around me. That's all I'll say. Let's lay that down as an artifact. But until then, remember, like, subscribe, share, comment, all that fun stuff that helps us out, gets us out there. Otherwise, remember, don't be a smeghead. Keep it not funny, and I'll see you next time. I'm never gonna get that right, and I don't care.